He gave me the choice, so I picked both. And that tiny rebellion lit a fire I couldn't, and didn't want to extinguish. From that moment onward, everything unraveled in the most intoxicating way. I can still feel the flutter in my chest as I tell this. I keep replaying that moment. The soft light of the room, the dust motes drifting lazily through sunbeams, and his voice so calm, so unapologetically permissive. You can choose. I trust you. It wasn't a dare. It wasn't a challenge. It was a gift. An unexpected offering that trembled with possibility. I can taste the residue of his words even now like smoke on my tongue. I'd been standing there, heart pounding, caught between incredulity and a surge of something deeper. Something glandular in its pull, undeniable, raw. The kind of pull that makes your breath catch, that makes the air around you feel too thin, too heavy. I had to clear my throat. I told myself to slow down. But my gaze was fixated, not on him but on them, the two of them. Two people standing close in the soft glow. Figures bathed in contrasting shadows and light. Choosing was supposed to mean picking one. But inside me my mind was screaming. Why choose when longing can stretch to both? The question was reckless. I could sense it. But I let it swirl free anyway, and then I felt that small perilous smile curl my lips as I whispered back. Both. It sounded like an ember thrown into kindling, small, reckless, and utterly igniting. The room shifted. Air charged electric, every surface seemed sharper. I could feel the pulse in my throat, a sudden warmth creeping through my belly. My fingertips tingled, brushing along the edge of possibility. It was absurd. The logic of reason shouting at me in one ear while something darker spoke heat in the other. The idea that everything could be undone or remade by that one choice was frightening. And yet, more thrilling than anything I'd ever allowed myself to feel. In that breathless pause afterward, the silence was so dense it pressed against my eardrums. His eyes flicked, one to her, then back to me, a lingering, unreadable spark burning in the shadows of his expression. And hers, the other woman, her hair catching stray light, cheekbones soft, her mouth curved in something like invitation, something teasingly dangerous. The atmosphere felt thick with affection and consequence, the air charged with what could be rather than what should be. Deep inside, my chest constricted with anticipation. My mind screamed caution, pragmatism. Don't cross this line. But my body had already eased across the threshold. The thrill of forbidden territory seeped into me. Thrilling and terrifying in equal measure. Every nerve ending seemed to hum with reckless energy, as though my skin remembered every brushed word, every hesitant breath, before our lips ever came close. Yet as I stood there, poised between decency and surrender, I realized with a jolt. I hadn't thought this through. I'd never wanted to before. There were threads of morality woven into the corners of my mind, and they were starting to unravel. The challenge had never been about desire. It was about something deeper. Guilt. Complicity. The self that says, I should not want this. And then there was the self that trembled at the thought, but I do. And so I did something I hadn't anticipated. I let the moment linger. I let tension bloom thick and cloying, until nearly unbearable. I felt the scrape of fear against the curve of my spine, and beneath it, a yearning so raw it made me dizzy. That's when one of them, her I think, stepped closer. Just a breath. Just a shift in warmth. Everything shivered. And just like that I realized once you open that door you can never close it again. My breathing stuttered. My heart thundered. I was suspended in that fragment of time, neither moving forward nor retreating, caught in the gravity of two desires pulling me in opposite directions, yet together. I couldn't stay here for long, or maybe I would. Maybe I'd let the moment drag out, sensing how thin the weight already was, knowing that once we crossed the line, there'd be no return. Not for me. The hush stretched. A faint click, something shifted. A glass set down, a whisper unheard. And the closeness that filled the space between us? That was everything. Cliffhanger. My breath trembled as one delicate hand, hers, curled toward mine. And then I thought, what if choosing both changes everything irreversibly? The moment her fingers touched mine, barely a brush, more breath than contact, I felt something electric shiver up my arm, tightening behind my ribs. It was such a small thing. So small it could have been accidental, a shift, a twitch of balance. But it wasn't. I knew it. She knew it. And judging by the way he watched us, leaning back slightly like a man savoring the start of a storm. He knew it too. The room grew warmer. Or maybe it was just me. I hadn't planned for this, hadn't fantasized in specifics. But now, standing in the center of a choice I'd made so impulsively, I was suddenly consumed by the details. The way her hair tumbled past her collarbone, loose and soft like it could tangle between fingers. The way her voice curled when she spoke, low and smoky, like a lullaby soaked in secret promises. And him still and steady like gravity, watching, not possessive, not jealous, just present, allowing. I felt stretched thin between them, breath caught somewhere between restraint and surrender. The air smelled like candle wax and bergamot, like skin just warmed and sheets just left. Time slowed into molasses as I watched her step closer, unhurried, confident in a way that made my throat tighten. She tilted her head slightly, studying me like I was the puzzle, the unsolved mystery in the room. I didn't speak. I couldn't. My voice had been lost somewhere in the tension between us. He hadn't moved. He didn't need to. He knew. This wasn't just about her and me. It was about something wider. A choice that had cracked something open. A fantasy, maybe. A hunger we'd all kept too tightly leashed. "I didn't expect you to say both," she murmured, her voice barely above a breath, but it landed like thunder in my chest. I tried to reply, but all that came was a soft laugh dry in my throat. Neither did I. That earned a smile from him. A real one, small but deep set in the corners of his eyes. I couldn't read the exact flavor of it. Pride? Approval? Anticipation? Maybe all three. Maybe something darker, more delicious. She circled me slightly, close but never touching. My skin prickled in response to the nearness, every cell leaning toward her. I turned my head slowly, following her with my gaze but keeping still, as if movement would break the spell. And then came the whisper. Not hers, his. Soft, low from behind me. "You're beautiful when you hesitate." The words wrapped around me like velvet. My spine straightened. My breath caught again. I wanted to respond with something coy, something clever, but I was undone, completely undone by the way their presence made me feel seen in layers. Not just my body but my conflict, my craving, my contradictions. All of it. Seen. And wanted. She moved in front of me again and without warning, reached up to brush a loose strand of hair from my cheek. Her fingers paused there, barely grazing skin. I swear I felt her pulse through the tips. I didn't back away. Instead I whispered, "Is this what you want?" A pause. "No," she said. "This is what we want." I looked past her at him. His expression unreadable but gaze steady. He didn't nod. He didn't speak. He just waited, letting the space between our bodies say everything. And I stood there, trembling inside, aware that every second was pushing us closer to something irreversible. Not a mistake but a revelation. The kind you feel more than you understand. I felt her hand slide down slowly, deliberately, to rest against my hip. Not gripping, just grounding, like an anchor. Or an invitation. I swore I could feel my heart beating against her palm, even through the layers of fabric. "You can still stop this," she said almost kindly. But the truth was I didn't want to. Not anymore. Cliffhanger. My lips parted to speak, to respond, to decide. But then I felt his hand, too warm, steady, on the small of my back. And suddenly I was caught between both of them, pulsing with heat, with hunger, with the terrifying thrill of not knowing what would happen next. His hand on my back changed everything. It wasn't just the warmth of it, though it soaked through fabric and into my spine like a quiet blaze. It was the way he placed it. Steady, grounding, like he knew I was drifting into some dangerous tide and he was anchoring me, or guiding me deeper into it. I couldn't tell which. Maybe both. She was still in front of me, fingertips grazing my waist now, eyes searching mine like she was deciphering a dream she'd once had and now couldn't believe was real. And behind me, him. Steady breath. Silent patience. Heat radiating into the hollow of my back. I was suspended in that delicate center, the pull of two magnetic fields, opposite and yet somehow perfectly aligned in their hunger. "You're shaking," she whispered. I hadn't realized I was. My breath came uneven now. Not from fear, not exactly. It was the weight of the moment, the awareness of being wanted. Not just seen, not just admired, but studied, touched, invited, claimed with care, but also with an intensity that melted every rational protest. He didn't speak again. Instead, his hand slowly slid higher, tracing the ridges of my spine. Not rushed, not greedy. Like he was learning me, memorizing the terrain of my hesitation and desire in equal measure. And when I leaned barely instinctively into the warmth of that touch, I heard the tiniest sound escape him. Almost a sigh. Almost a yes. She watched it all. Her eyes flicked down my body, and when they returned to mine, her voice was softer. This isn't the first time you've thought about this, is it? I swallowed hard. No. And that one word, honest and bare, seemed to unlock something in her. She stepped closer, so close I could feel the heat of her breath on my throat, the slow exhale that made goosebumps rise down my arms. Her hand slipped up, the back of her fingers brushing the side of my neck, trailing heat and confusion in their wake. Me neither, she whispered. That admission, that shared secret. It split something open inside me. Not just desire but recognition. We had all been circling something for too long. Hiding glances. Laughs too long. Conversations that dipped too low into tension and rose too fast with laughter. I thought I imagined it. I hadn't. And now we were here. Inside it. His lips were suddenly near my ear, not touching, but so close I could feel the shape of his breath. Are you sure? He asked, not as a test but as a tether. A lifeline if I needed one. I nodded, slow but certain. I've never been more sure. Something shifted after that. The space between the three of us melted. It wasn't chaotic. It wasn't frenzied. It was slow, spiraling. A dance without choreography but perfect rhythm. Hands traced unfamiliar paths. Breath mingled. My skin became a map they both explored, gently, reverently, with a hunger that was emotional as much as physical. But then the twist. Just as I was giving in to it completely, eyes fluttering closed under the spell of her lips near mine, he said something that stopped me cold. There's something you don't know. I froze. So did she. What? I asked, my voice barely audible. He stepped back slightly, just enough to break the triangle, and looked at her. She looked down, then at me. There was a silence, deep, aching, thick. She was the one who spoke. We've talked about this before. About you. The world tilted slightly. What do you mean? He stepped forward again, his voice quieter now. We didn't plan this. But we've both wanted you. We just never said it out loud. Not until recently. I staggered back a step. Not hurt, not even angry, just stunned. My mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. So this? It's real, she said quickly. None of this is a game. My heart pounded louder than anything else in the room. A mixture of flattery, confusion, arousal and vulnerability crashed through me like a tidal wave. You've both thought about this? About me? She nodded. For months. He added, longer. And in that moment I realized, I wasn't caught between them. I was the center of a desire I had underestimated. A craving that ran deeper than one spontaneous night. I was the spark that had been slowly building in their world long before I ever said, both. Cliffhanger. I took a slow breath, looked at both of them, and for the first time I asked, then what are we waiting for? The question hung in the air like smoke. Then what are we waiting for? Their eyes met behind me, a flash of silent agreement, before they both turned their attention back to me. Something shifted in the room, subtle but undeniable, like the air itself had changed temperature. He stepped closer. So did she. And I felt my breath falter again. They were no longer just watching. They were approaching. Slowly. As if I were something precious. Or dangerous. Or both. There was no rush in their movements, only certainty. His hand returned to my back, firmer this time, warm and steady. Hers found my wrist, sliding down my arm in a barely there caress that made my skin spark like static. I was hyper-aware of everything. The soft sweep of fabric against my thighs, the tickle of her breath on my collarbone, the scent of him like cedar and something darker, pulling me deeper into the moment. I've wanted to touch you like this for a long time, she whispered, her voice softer now, reverent. My heart thudded wildly. Why didn't you? She smiled. Because I didn't think I was allowed to. And then, like she couldn't stop herself, her lips brushed my shoulder, through the fabric of my top, and something inside me snapped. Not in fear. Not in resistance. In release. and surrender. It was as though my body had been waiting for that exact moment, that precise permission to stop pretending. Every part of me surged forward. I leaned into her. I arched into him. I let my head tilt back just enough to expose my neck, and I heard the faintest catch in his breath. We were no longer flirting with the edge. We were on the other side. He moved to face me now, and our eyes locked. "You don't have to do anything you don't want to," he said. His hand cupped my jaw gently, his thumb brushing across my cheek. "Even now." I laughed soft, breathless. "What if this is exactly what I want?" And then I felt her arms around me from behind, slow, wrapping me in warmth, her chest pressed against my back. My body was cocooned between theirs. Safe. Surrounded. Desired. The contrast between them was dizzying. He was heat and stillness, strength and restraint. She was softness and chaos, her energy a flickering flame just under the skin. And between them I felt like something new. Something alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. "I can't believe this is happening," I whispered. He leaned in closer, his lips brushing the corner of my mouth. Then stopped thinking. And just like that he kissed me. Not hungrily. Not possessively. Just deeply. As though he had been waiting, starving for this exact kind of connection, not with my body but with me. I felt it down to my toes. But what caught me more off guard, what unraveled me completely, was the moment her lips found the side of my neck, just as I was losing myself in him. It was too much. And not enough. My knees weakened. They held me. Their hands moved in tandem, painting slow, invisible lines down my arms, across my hips, over places that made my breath catch and eyes close. I was no longer guiding the moment, I was being carried by it, floating in a sea of warmth and touch and breath and permission. And still there was no rush, no desperation, only that sweet, unbearable ache of prolonged anticipation. "We'll stop whenever you say," she said softly, mouth brushing my ear. But I didn't want it to stop. Not now. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Then, without warning, he pulled back slightly, his hand lifting my chin until our eyes met again. "There's one more thing you should know," he said, voice lower now, more serious. "Before this goes any further." I stilled. So did she. "What?" I asked, pulse thudding. He looked between us. "This isn't just a night for us." The room fell silent again. This could be the beginning of something real. I blinked. And suddenly, the weight of it wasn't just desire. It was a choice again, but this time not between bodies. Cliffhanger. I turned toward her, toward him, my mouth dry, my heart louder than ever. And I realized the heat wasn't the scariest part, it was what might come after. When he said, "This could be the beginning of something real," the heat in the room didn't dissipate, it condensed. It curled tighter around my ribs, pressing in, coiling tension deep in my chest in a way that no kiss or caress ever had. Because suddenly, this wasn't just a beautiful, unspoken hunger manifesting in touches and gasps and tangled breath. It was a question of consequence. I stepped back. Just a little. Not because I wanted to end it, but because I needed space to think. And I could feel both of them sensing that shift, stepping back emotionally too. Just enough to give me room. "I thought this was," I stopped. Because I didn't even know what I thought. A one-time thing? A fantasy? A story I'd never tell? I certainly hadn't imagined something real. And yet, standing in the glow of their bodies with my pulse still singing and the echo of her breath still warming my skin, I realized I'd never felt more real in my life. "Why now?" I asked, my voice thinner than I meant. He answered first, voice low. "Because we've waited long enough." She added softer, "Because you finally said yes." I dropped my gaze. My hands trembled. Not from fear, but from the rush of realization that nothing was ever going to be the same after tonight. And that's when my past decided to show up. Uninvited, unwanted, but undeniably present. I thought of him. My ex. The one I'd built a life with for years. The one I'd buried desire for. The one who used to say, "You're too much sometimes. Too curious." The one who always wanted me quiet. Predictable. Contained. I remembered the nights I dreamt of more. Of something wild, something unapologetic. And I remembered waking beside someone who looked at me like I was wrong for even needing that. Now I stood between two people who didn't just allow that part of me, they adored it. And I realized that scared me more than anything else. Am I a terrible person for wanting this? I asked. They both stepped closer. Together. No judgment in their faces, only clarity. No, he said with conviction. You're brave. She nodded. You're choosing honesty. With yourself. I couldn't speak. The truth swelled too sharp in my throat. And then in the silence that followed, something remarkable happened. She reached out first, gently, tenderly, and touched my cheek, guiding my face to hers. This time it wasn't fire. It was warmth. A kiss that didn't steal breath, it gave it back. Soft, steady, anchoring. And when she pulled away, his hand found mine again. Not possessive. Just a steady palm against my trembling fingers. A silent offer. You're not alone in this. I looked at them. Really looked. And I saw it. Not just desire. Not just lust. But something that looked a little too much like love. Not the kind with promises and rules and titles. The kind that feels like oxygen after too long underwater. The kind that scares you because it isn't supposed to exist, not in this way. Not with two people. Not with all these blurred lines. But it did. And now I had to decide if I was brave enough to follow where it led. Cliffhanger. I let my fingers lace with his, my other hand finding hers. And I whispered just loud enough for them both to hear. Then let's stop pretending this is just physical. Then let's stop pretending this is just physical. The moment those words left my mouth, something inside me broke open. Not shattered, opened. Like a window finally unlatched after too many seasons sealed shut. He blinked just once and then nodded. Slow. Like he was absorbing it not just in his mind but in his entire body. She smiled. But not the flirty, dangerous smile she wore when she first touched me. No. This one was different. It was quieter. Fuller. Like she'd just seen me for the first time and found something she'd been hoping for. The silence that followed didn't feel heavy. It felt sacred. No one rushed to fill it. No one rushed anything. We just stood there, touching lightly, breathing in sync, suspended in a moment that felt impossibly delicate. And then I whispered, "Tell me the truth. Both of you." They glanced at each other again. Another silent conversation between them, built on history I didn't know. And for a second I thought they might withhold it. Protect me. Keep the fantasy intact. But he spoke. "I've loved you longer than I should have," he said, voice raw. I told myself it was admiration, respect, then friendship. But it was more. It is more. I just never thought I had the right to tell you. I stared at him. My pulse pounded behind my ribs like a drumbeat I couldn't quiet. She picked up the thread, stepping closer. He told me first. A while ago. And I thought he was insane because I'd felt the same. But neither of us wanted to risk this. You. Tears stung my eyes, unexpected and hot. So you've both, kept this secret together? No, he said gently. We kept it for you. That broke me. Not in a painful way, but in the way a dam breaks when it's held too much for too long. I stepped back slightly, only so I could see them both at once. You didn't tell me because you thought I'd say no. She nodded. We didn't want to overwhelm you. He added. But when you said both, we knew you were ready. Even if you didn't realize it yet. I swallowed hard, tears now balancing dangerously in my lashes. And what now? What does this become? That's when she reached for my hand. Both of them did, folding me between their palms like something fragile and cherished. Now, she said. Now we stop being afraid. The way they looked at me. Gazes full of heat? Yes, but also safety, reverence, maybe even awe. It made my heart ache in a way I hadn't expected. I'd been touched before. Desired. Even loved, in versions of the word that no longer felt honest. But I'd never been held like this. Like someone worth choosing together. Like someone who didn't have to fragment her desire to be worthy. Like someone who could belong wholly and completely, in the arms of two people who wanted all of me. Not divided. Not split. Just me. Their touch shifted again. Fingers trailing upward, breath warm against my temple. Their bodies slowly pressing into mine on either side. The physical ache returned, deep and humming, but now it carried something deeper with it. An emotional current that stole the last of my defenses. I turned toward her first because she was the one I doubted. The one I hadn't allowed myself to want out loud until tonight. And I kissed her. Not tentative. Not testing. Claiming. She melted into it, her hands cradling my jaw like I was something sacred. Her lips were soft, but the way she kissed me was full of certainty. She had wanted this. She still wanted this. And now so did I, openly, fearlessly. When we broke apart, I turned toward him. And his hands were already waiting. No jealousy. No competition. Just a shared rhythm. Kissed him too. Deeper. Slower. Like our mouths were finishing a conversation our hearts had been whispering for months. And when I pulled back, breathing heavy, I realized I didn't have to pick anymore. Because I already had. I had picked this. I had picked them. Cliffhanger. As they led me toward the room beyond, where the light dimmed and silence grew thicker, I felt my heart crack wide open. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of what came next. The bedroom wasn't what I expected. No silk. No dim red glow. No signs of orchestrated seduction. Just soft light, a crumpled duvet, and the unmistakable scent of home. As if the space itself hadn't been prepared for fantasy, but for something far more dangerous. Honesty. I paused at the threshold, breath snagged in my throat. Behind me, their footsteps were quiet. No rush. No pressure. They knew. The body can surrender long before the heart feels safe. And this, what we were stepping into, wasn't about release. It was about exposure. She was the first to touch me again. Her fingers found the hem of my shirt and hovered there, asking without words. My eyes met hers and I nodded. But what undid me wasn't her hand, it was her gaze. She looked at me like she was unwrapping something fragile. Not skin. Truth. When the fabric lifted, her breath caught. Beautiful, she murmured. Not with hunger. With reverence. He stepped closer behind me, hands grazing my hips, his chest brushing my back. His warmth surrounded me, and when his lips found my shoulder, I gasped. Not from surprise, but from how seen I felt. They weren't devouring me. They were learning me. I wasn't an object caught between them. I was the center. They moved with such synchronicity it made me wonder how long they'd imagined this choreography. Every brush of skin, every quiet inhale, every touch that paused just before it landed. It was unbearable in the best way. I was pulsing with need, but it wasn't just physical anymore, it was emotional. Cellular. Like every piece of me had been waiting to be held in exactly this way. And yet, even in that swirling intensity, fear crept in. Not fear of them, but of what this meant. How could this last? How could something so tender, so wild, so impossible survive in the real world? I turned slightly, my voice barely more than a breath. What happens tomorrow? Neither of them answered right away. He sat on the edge of the bed, pulled me gently down beside him. We don't have all the answers, but we're not going to disappear. She knelt in front of me, resting her chin on my knee. This isn't just a night for us. You're not a fantasy. You're... I looked at them both, messy-haired, desire-softened, still fully dressed, and yet so heartbreakingly open, and I felt tears threaten again. I don't know how to do this, I admitted. Any of it. He brushed his thumb over my cheek. Then we figure it out. Together. They didn't try to fix it. They didn't promise happily ever after. But the way they looked at me, steady, unblinking, here, was more comforting than any fairy tale. And that's when it happened. Not sex. Not even touch. Something quieter. More profound. She rested her head on my lap. He leaned his forehead against my shoulder. And we just stayed there. Breathing. Tangled. Whole. It wasn't the heat of the moment anymore. It was the after. The kind that isn't supposed to come until the end, but somehow arrived in the middle. I could still feel the ache, the wanting, the tension. But layered on top of it now was something bigger. Trust. And that terrified me more than any kiss ever had. Cliffhanger. I closed my eyes, letting the stillness settle. But then her voice cut through the quiet, gentle but clear. There's one thing I haven't told you yet. There's one thing I haven't told you yet. Her voice was soft, almost hesitant, but something in it, a tremble, a truth, made every muscle in my body still. I looked down at her, her head still resting on my lap, eyes tilted up toward mine like she was bracing herself. He shifted slightly beside me, sensing the shift, his hand gently brushing my knee as if to anchor us all. You don't have to tell me, I said, though part of me already knew. This would change something. I want to, she whispered. The room held its breath. She sat up slowly, pulling her knees to her chest. Her voice dropped, barely above a whisper. I've never done this before. Not just this, she said, gesturing between the three of us, but letting someone see me like this. I've been in love before, but I've never been brave enough to say it out loud. The words felt like glass, sharp, fragile, too delicate to hold without bleeding. I didn't know if you'd feel the same, she continued. But I need you to know, this isn't curiosity for me. It's not just exploration. It's you. I've wanted you for so long. Quietly. From a distance. Always afraid if I touched what I really felt, it would ruin everything. Tears filled my eyes. My chest ached from holding in so much, from pretending this was just a moment, just a choice. It never was. She looked at me raw and unguarded. If this ends tomorrow, I needed you to know. I meant every second. I was silent, overwhelmed by the sheer truth of it. Then his voice came rougher now. Honest. I was terrified too, he said. Terrified of losing you, of complicating everything. But watching you with her, the way you looked at each other, I realized something. I turned to him. It wasn't jealousy, he said. It was relief. Because I knew she saw you the way I do. That's when I broke. Not in a dramatic, sobbing way, but in that quiet surrender of walls finally collapsing. Because this hadn't been a triangle of lust. It had been love stretched and rearranged in ways I didn't know were possible. I leaned into her. I reached for him. And the three of us, flawed, scared, undone, folded into each other like a single breath. For a long time we said nothing. We didn't need to. The air between us pulsed with everything unspoken. There were still questions. Still uncertainty. Still a world outside this room that would never understand. But there was also us. No promises. No labels. Just three people who had chosen to stop pretending. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But I knew this. What we shared wasn't wrong. It was rare. Messy. Impossible. Beautiful. And real.